They were so good to her, though. Right. Sheriff Bill Osborne hired her back at that time, and
Lord, I forgot about him.
Yeah, he did. He hired her. Actually, my dad worked for him, and when he found out what was going on with my dad, he actually let my dad go, and he went to my mom and said, "I know that you're going to need a job to help take care of those kids, and I've got an opening for you." And I can see the Lord's hand in that, because she retired from that job 30 years later, as the captain of that facility. That's beautiful. And the Lord allowed, and she's, got a good pension now, and the Lord just took care of her through that whole entire thing. And I'm sure there were days that weren't easy, but that showed me what you do in life. You don't let things like that just get you down and you just lay in a bed and wait to die. You have things to do. There's things to do in the world. There's things that the Lord has for you to do, and you just go and you do them. And I think that really molded me a lot with that. And
the things that she didn't say. Okay. You ever think about that in life?
There were times I can remember that I would just be so angry with my dad. I would come home and I would just say some really hurtful things.
I do remember being angry.
Yes, I was very angry. I was like, I wouldn't care if he got hit by a bus, really. And now that he's passed away, I do feel bad about those things at this point. But my mom would literally, she would just about take a switch to me. She was like, "Don't ever let me hear that come out of your mouth again. That is your daddy, and you do not say stuff like that. You need to be praying for him." That was what she always said. I never recall her saying one bad word about him ever to this day.
But do you think this, and I know I don't want to deal too far in it, but do you think there's a difference between her saying, "Don't say those things," and she didn't condone what he did?
Right, she didn't.
And in life, I think we have all kinds of things that happen to us, that people, there's things that we run into that we don't really come against them for, but we don't approve the action. Does that make sense?
Exactly. And she didn't. She, of course, she did not condone what he did, but she just didn't want us to have any hard feelings toward him. And of course, in the later years, he and I did, we did smooth things over, and I believe he made everything right before he died. And I believe he's, because, my dad was at one point a mighty man of God. He really was. And you knew him. He was a good person. And I think everybody was just completely floored when all that happened, because he was such a good person. And I don't want people to think that that's the only aspect of his life. He was a good dad. He really was. When he was there with us, he was a very good dad. And I just think probably that one event, really how she handled that throughout our lives, I think that's molded me and made me what I am more than anything.
I think that's great. See, I think that, and it's back to the point, those storms and those things, I think seeing, as we touched on, seeing what she didn't say, but how she did respond. And I think that our children watch us a lot more. I was sharing with a gentleman the other day, and I talked to him about this. I talked to him about how there's things in life that he didn't like that happened to him, but they molded him into the person he is now. And it's sort of like my dad was whipping me one time when I skipped school, and he was whipping me extensively. Okay. I mean, he was beating the fire out of me, and they began to express how good it was for me, but I couldn't see that at the time. It didn't really make much sense, but something could have happened to me later on in life by me not being in the right place where I needed to be. But I think sometimes in our life, there's things that happen. I believe, let me share this. This is something I share with a lot, that I believe there's people that actually do things to you bad that don't want to do things to you. Okay. And I relate this back to Pharaoh and Moses. When God told Moses, I want you to go down to Pharaoh and tell him, let my people go, and this is what's going to happen. And oh, by the way, Moses, when you get there, I'm going to make Pharaoh not listen to you. Well, I mean, that's a bit of a bummer, ain't it? Okay. So, but because God had to get his children out there, and he knew they didn't want to go. And I believe the Red Sea had nothing to do with Pharaoh's army. It had everything to do with the children of Israel, keep them from going back. Same with the pillar of fire and the wilderness. But I think in your life, there's people maybe have done some things to you that didn't want to do those things to you. And we get upset at them. For example, when I was teaching Sunday school, okay, we got a new pastor there. And Brother Day, who I loved, was leaving and going. And when I walked in one morning downstairs at the church, and it was okay. But he met me and said, "Are you JohnDash?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "We don't need you here anymore." And he told me to leave. Okay.
I never knew that.
Yeah. And it's all right because I think he's dead now too. But I mean, and he told me to leave. And it was good for me because I was very comfortable and I could teach Sunday school just as easy. It was a breezy easy for me. Okay. But from that point, I left and went to the mission field. I preached under the tents. I done things. I went all over the world and done things that I wouldn't have done if I could have stayed there.
Right.
Very comfortable.
Very comfortable.
Okay. But so I don't think he wanted to do that.
Right.
Okay. And at the time, there were some things in his heart. I mean, he didn't want me there. Okay. And, but when he told me that, it bothered me a little bit. And it took me a couple of years to sort of think, well, why did that happen? And the Lord really began to deal with me is to put me where I needed to be. Yeah. Okay. Because there's greater things he has for us.
Because you would have never stepped out because you were comfortable.
I was felt it was so easy. It's sort of like operating in a you can take a tractor trailer and pull a little tiny trailer around and it's easy for it. Yeah. It's never operating up against the load like it needs to. And sometimes God has things for us that he's handpicked us to do that are a little bit of a load. Yeah. And he needs to use us in those positions. Yeah. And that's hard to swallow sometimes.
It is. It is very hard. Yeah. And we finally did at some point leave that church too, not because of anything bad. It was just, I felt like the Lord was moving me a different direction. I had been there since I was 5 days old, literally. Right. And I was 26 at this point, and I just kept feeling like, this is not where I'm really supposed to be. And so I did. I left, and the Lord has used me in a lot of ways, a lot of ways since then. But I always go back to my restaurant job. That was people have asked me, what is your favorite job ever? And I've been a nurse. I've been an RN for 38 years. I've been a nursing home administrator for the last 10 years. Yeah. And I've loved those jobs. But my favorite job ever was at John Boy's.
It really is a lot of fun, ain't it? I mean, you think about it, and I don't know why. I tell you what I think it might be. You have a sense of accomplishment. Okay, probably in nursing, you're never going to get done. There's always going to be more sick people. Okay, then you get up one day and they say, "Oh, no more sick people. Go ahead and take a day off."
You're never going to heal them all.
So what I mean is, but it seems like, man, when you get an order for 2 hot dogs, 3 French fries, and some onion rings, you can put them in, and you have done your job.
And people say, "Oh, that was such a good meal." It was so good.
It makes you feel good.
But it was just,